Very early on, when I first became interested in calligraphy, I thought that letters occupied a really special place in our human culture. They are the conjunction of intellect, visual material, the body is involved in making them, that there were kind of a junction point of many different aspects. History, aesthetics, it had this connection to craft. I became interested in calligraphy when I was at Reed College in Portland, Oregon. There were banners that were always done on butcher paper for the movies and the lectures and any kind of event. And I remember from the very beginning of just first seeing this stuff being completely fascinated by it. I hadn't the slightest idea really what it was. I really began learning about calligraphy from my classmates. And then finally, actually after I graduated, I took a summer class from Lloyd Reynolds, who was the man, you know. At the end of that, I saw a video made by Hallmark cards of Hermann Zapf working, and I was completely blown away by that, and I thought, I want that. So I put together a portfolio. It took me 3 months of doing formal pieces of calligraphy and sent it off to them, and they hired me. And it was at Hallmark that I became acquainted with type and typography. At Hallmark, they had just recently acquired a photo typesetting machine, and they set all the interiors of the cards, that was called the sentiment. The sentiments were all set in type. So I was completely fascinated by that. And then, of course, when Zapf came, I learned more about, his whole connection with type and typography. So I looked around at what I might study as design on the West Coast. They had no emphasis on typography or on lettering or calligraphy. So I decided, well, I'll just get a degree in something that I like. So I went back part-time to school to study mathematics. One of the things that happened to me while I was learning mathematics was I learned how to program a computer. And I started doing computer graphics, and I wrote this little program to write letter forms, starting with skeletons and expanding them. In the mid-'80s, the people who were working in the whole area knew something was really happening that was going to be very significant, that was going to change the way typesetting was done, the way laying out pages was done, and the way type production was done. I managed a type development program at a company named Autologic. Autologic was the first company that made a successful digital typesetting machine. And they wanted to sell machines in the commercial typesetting market, but they suddenly realized they didn't have the appropriate fonts, and they hired me to fix that. After I left Autologic, I took a job for a little, what essentially was a startup company called Camex in Boston. And they were the people who did software and hardware for Bitstream to start up their company. I was there for a year, and in the middle of that year, walking to work, I saw this little box in a window of a store, and it was the first Macintosh, and I went in and I asked them to show me what it did, and a light went on, it's like, uh-oh. Shortly after that, I got a call from John Warnock, who was one of the two founders of Adobe. He said, well, we're looking for somebody to do our type development. Would you like to come interview? And I spent a day there, and they offered me a job at the end of the day, and I took it. I actually said I have to think about it, but it only took me one day. Yeah. I thought it might be a little cooler to wait, 24 hours. Initially, Adobe was in the business of licensing software only to OEMs. That is, they would license PostScript and the design for an interpreter of PostScript to go in your printer. And the OEM business was very lucrative for them. Their first big deal was with Apple for the LaserWriter. The LaserWriter was an incredibly big success. And then they did this image setter with Linotype. And I think Linotype thought they were going to sell, 50 machines or something like that in the first year. And they, immediately sold many, many more than that. So PostScript just took off like a rocket. I think the founders and some of the other people in the company thought we should do retail products, and they eventually did. And the retail product was Illustrator. And Illustrator was really built on the font editing software. Font editing software just got turned into Illustrator by generalizing a little bit, but it's all about drawing with Beziers and editing them and so on. There were a lot of new users. That the people that we were making type for were no longer just graphic designers and type shops and publications. That there was a huge range now that had opened up. Adobe was very supportive, but at the same time it was very clear that their priority was about the software. I did not take this job in order to move into upper management and become part of the administration of the company. I took it because I was interested in type and making typefaces. After I left Adobe, I started Stone Type Foundry. My interest has been trying to expand the conceptual understanding of what we're doing, to try to move things along at the edge of what I think is our knowledge about what we're doing. Finding what really legibility is about, and in terms of how much space things take up when you print them. That's the kind of thing that I have tried to do in doing my type designs. Is most of them are not done for clients. Some of them have been, but a lot of them have just been done to explore ideas and conceptual framework of typography. So I think that has not always been lucrative, but I think it's been, I think it has expanded somewhat people's views of what typography is about. I hope. That's what I hope. The experience of being a sole practitioner at making type has been a very big part of my personal education. The other people that I know who do this, I feel a lot of kinship with them. I know what it's like, and it's been quite an interesting journey. I think being involved in this whole transition from what really was the phototype era, which is when I started doing design work, into and being very intimately involved in the startup of the digital type, has been really, really important part of my life. It's been a good ride.